I remember the first election. I think the first election there was when Truman was running, and I'd never been happy about Truman to begin with, because someone else I'd really wanted to be there as vice president. But he came through on the train, and I can remember we went down and listened to him. And at that time, I hadn't been active in politics. In high school, one of my closest friends' father was the editor of the newspaper, and they were Republicans. But I can remember when Wilkie ran, and that's the first election, and it was so exciting, because they didn't give you a lot of information. You kind of had to figure it out yourself, and we'd be sitting there with our little tags and writing down how everybody was voting and how things were going.
Did you actually attend these? Are you saying?
No. We'd listen to them on the radio.
Oh, on the radio, right. That's right.
Radio, yeah.
That's right, and they would say, "Here comes to South Dakota, votes this way."
Yeah, and it was exciting, and I was supporting of Wilkie at that time, and of course he didn't get it. But
had the bug bitten you at that point of interest in the political affairs?
That was a little bit. In high school, I did belong to an organization that was called something like United Now or One World. It was an organization that was promoting stronger ties between the U.S. and Britain. And it was headed up, it was a national organization, headed up by someone from the University of Montana. But, I hadn't really been much interested in politics. And I can remember when I first went down to Democratic headquarters.
Where?
It was...
In Bozeman?
Yeah, in Bozeman. It was on Main Street. And I walked in, and way in the back there was old Van Winkle. He was minding the office. And he was surprised. He said, hardly anyone comes in the front door. They sneak in the back door. Because there just weren't very many Democrats around. But then I got involved with the League of Women Voters.
And that was about when? Which year about?
That was probably whenever they first organized in Bozeman.
Early 50s.
Yeah, early 50s.
Okay.
It was then, and I really liked that, because here was a group of women that did something other than playing bridge. I always refused to play bridge, which was a social sin, really. I mean.
Oh yes, that's exactly what women did.
People couldn't believe. And then we had another new professor who came to teach architecture, and his wife also didn't play bridge.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And,
good match.
Yeah, it was good. And I continued during those years of just taking classes that I knew were good, that I'd find professors that I wanted to take their classes. And what really spurred me to go ahead and get a degree was the matter of insurance, because Hugo kept wanting to buy additional life insurance, and I just thought that was a waste of money. And I said, well, I will get myself so I am eligible to teach school, and I'll get a degree, and I can do that. And so I did. I went back and took all these classes that I didn't really want to take, but...
This is at Montana State, in Bozeman? And so you were a matriculated student at that point in the education department?
Oh, I wasn't. There wasn't a degree that I wanted there. When I first started, the only degrees, I could have gotten one in secretarial, which I didn't want, or in home economics, which I didn't want.
Do you mean because there were particular tracks for women?
Yeah, those were the only things that they had.
Oh.
But after being there long enough, I got my degree in general studies, which included a lot of things I wanted. And then almost right away, I got a teaching assistantship to teach sociology.
Where?
At the university.
Really?
Yeah. And started on a graduate program.
This again is in the 50s. The kids would be about. It
This
helps
was,
to think about the age of the kids.
Yeah,
probably.
late 50s this would have been.
Okay.
And also during this time I was working with Methodist Youth Fellowship. I'd been their state director.
Wow. So you were active.
I did that, and that was, that was a great
By
thing
the way.
to do. Yeah, but by the way, but it was, it was almost full-time work, except it was volunteer.
Right. Yeah, the Methodists were very active.
Yeah. And the first year I did that, we took a tour, a bus tour. We worked a lot with a group from Calgary. They weren't Methodists, they were whatever the Canadians have. But together we took a bus and started in Havre and went across the country to Montreal and Ottawa.
Oh my!
And then down into Boston, and had a couple of days there, and New York, and D.C.
So you would have been late 20s, 30.
Yeah.
30-ish.
Yeah. 30, mid-30s by then.
Mid-30s.
Because Diana and Laurie were both on that trip, and Diana was...
Oh, how wonderful.
Diana was a 9th grader, and Laurie was a 10th grader.
Perfect timing for them, for their age.
Yeah.
It's because they were in the youth group, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did that. I stayed with that until they were both in college, and then by that time I was doing more full-time work with. Well, I had my assistantship at the university teaching.
Now,
and at that time, teaching as a graduate assistant.
Yes.
One semester I taught 15 credits.
Oh my goodness! but in a variety of courses.
Yeah.
But what else besides sociology?
They were mostly at that time still sociology. I had the sociology of the Great Plains. I'd never taken that course, but I had 4 really good students, and together we enjoyed that a lot.
How marvelous!
And I taught classes in leadership. And it was good. And when I had just finished my master's degree, I'd been working in the sociology department, and it was sociology and economics were together at that time.
Oh, wow.
We had coffee. This is another political thing. We had a coffee room upstairs where we'd gather around this big table and talk, and they would always tell me, this is the table where the programs for the New Deal were developed.
Wow,
Yeah.
How fascinating.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and that was pretty
How did they come to be developed there? Who was the key person who was in Montana?
They were the economists that were there.
Oh, the economists, right.
And
were they at the university? Did they come?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be darned. So that was quite an active place. Now,
anyway, at this time, the Ag Econ department was responsible for their big national conference that they have every year.
Agricultural economics?
And they have the conference that lasts for 3 or 4 days, but in conjunction with it, there are all kinds, maybe a dozen other organizations more specialized that meet at the same place just a little before or a little after. So this was a big deal. And they offered me this job of running the conference.
They really picked her right out.
Not the program part, but
were you still volunteering, or did you get paid for this?
Oh, I got paid for.
Good.
In fact,
that's a big job.
Before I took it, they took me to the conference they had the year before, and it was in Canada, just across from Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow. In Ontario.
Yeah, yes. The University of Ontario, it must have been. And went through, all the things they did. And it was...
That's a big job.
Yeah.
Running one of those, the logistics and the...
And, we came back and we had to design the invitations and the packets and the stuff we sent out and plan for places for people to live. Mm-hmm. They could stay in the dorms, and how to get them picked up at the airport and all this. And I had, by the time it was really going, I had a whole year to prepare for it, but in the few months before, I had an office that was in the lower floor of the Student Union building. And while I was there, I had a lot of volunteer students, and one of them turned out to be a whiz. That was Dean Hart. Did you ever know Dean Hart? And
he became a dean, or his name was Dean?
His name was Dean.
Okay.
And he had been a student off and on, but very, very well organized. He'd also been east to school for a while. Mm-hmm. But he arranged all kinds of things. I mean, he really set it up so that, when people came in from the airport on, they got good treatment. And
the hospitality.
And arranged all kinds of separate things, and we had activities set up for the women. Had a marvelous. We were going to have a string quartet set up.
I love it for the agriculture.
Up at
What university?
Up at Ferry Lake, which is a
You're up there. I don't want you to get cold. Or Dorothy, it's getting all chilly now. The sun's in. Is it on?
But Ferry Lake was a lovely place back in the mountains, and we were going to take them up there on buses and had it all catered and so on. Come the week they arrived, we had solid rain.
Oh no!
Miserable weather every day. And anyway, we didn't get to Ferry Lake. We got as far as the ski hill and had the tea and chamber music up in their lodge.
They were lovely. I bet they loved it.
Yeah, and it was good. And the other thing that they had planned, which was a big thing, was a fish fry. And these guys had all been catching fish all summer and freezing them. Mm-hmm. So we would have enough fish to serve. I think they had a couple of thousand people coming to the fish fry.
Oh my goodness.